My God, it's got grip. Fantastic. Jesus, it's loud. Cool. It's hard to believe that a car like this is already 60 years old. No ABS, nothing at all, just 1,000 horsepower. I can barely change gears quick enough, it's that fast.
Legends are born on the asphalt.
This lateral acceleration, everything happens so quickly.
Then, as now, anyone wanting to be crowned motor racing champion had to sit in a winning car. For more than 70 years, one German car manufacturer, with its high-performance cars, has consistently taken its place at the highest levels of motorsport. Porsche.
You've done it, Stucker. You've won Le Mans. Thanks again to my precious car. It was a moment I'll never forget.
In this film, 6 of the most successful and valuable racing cars from Stuttgart return to the track. The legendary 550 Spyder, the difficult-to-control 917 Spyder, the 911 4x4 rally car, and the award-winning 962, a 911 GT1, and the unique hybrid 919. These sports cars were ahead of their time, won over 500 races between them, and became icons of motorsport. Located in the center of Stuttgart-Zuffenhausen is the Porsche Museum. Since 2009, the German sports car manufacturer has been conserving its legacy from 100 years of automotive construction. The showrooms are home to over 80 historic vehicles, including dozens of racing cars. The museum has its own workshop where a team of mechanics looks after its collection of 600 vehicles. Nearly all of the legendary racing cars are drivable and get to return to the track several times a year. Because most of the exhibits from Stuttgart aren't street legal, the racing cars are transported to their destination by truck. This time, it's the company's own racetrack in Leipzig. And, as always, the specialists from the museum go along too. They are very familiar with the quirks and idiosyncrasies of their darlings. The men have been looking after some of the cars for years. Unloading the precious cargo of rare one-offs worth millions is routine for them. They travel around the world with their winning vehicles, affording motorsport fans the rare opportunity to see and hear their dream cars of yore on the track in person. Every one of these cars has had to battle it out on the racetrack to earn its legend status. But what makes them so special? Why were they so successful? The answers to these questions are supplied by 2 men who ought to know. Hans-Joachim Stuck, himself a racing legend, Le Mans winner and German touring car champion, and Lars Kern, former race car driver. Nowadays, he pilots the test and development vehicles at Porsche. But today, he's at the wheel of a genuine classic car from 1956, the 550 Spyder, a racing car that had one mission in life: to be lighter than all the others, and thus faster. The aluminum body, together with the steel tube frame, weighs just 149 kilograms. The speedometer is located in the center of the instrument panel, as it should be in a proper sports car. Beneath the distinctive engine cover and mounted in front of the rear axle sits the vertical shaft engine. The 550 was especially frugal thanks to its dual ignition system. In the mid-1950s, this was cutting-edge technology, and it came at a price, almost 25,000 German marks. In comparison, a VW Bug cost just under 4,000 marks. A mere 100 550s were built, and their market value has increased accordingly. Today, collectors are prepared to shell out over 2 million euros for a 550 Spyder. The 550 was still under development when Hans-Joachim Stuck was born in 1951.
We go on go. That's how races started in those days, when the driver was decisive in making the car do what he wanted. There was no power steering, no power brakes or anything. They're just things the driver has to learn about the car, become one with it, a bit like in a marriage. You first have to get to know your old lady before you know how she ticks. And it's the same with a car, especially this one.
Lars Kern must first get to know the car too. He's never sat in the Spyder before.
110 horsepower isn't likely to knock anyone's socks off these days, but combined with 550 kilograms, I reckon it could be a lot of fun. When you look at these tires, I mean, bikes have fatter ones nowadays. Everything's analog. It's always nice as you get a lot of feedback when everything operates mechanically and there's no power brakes or any systems, just the car and me.
A very special driving experience, and one not many people get the chance to have. There are just 80 550s left in the entire world. Only the old seatbelts in this Spyder have been exchanged for modern ones.
The driving position is good, the steering wheel is so thin, incredible. And large, but on the whole, the cockpit's pretty okay, ergonomically speaking. I mean, I've sat in worse cars, I reckon.
And even though the 550 may look rather quaint to our eyes, it's a proper racing car.
And we're off.
The first legend heads out onto the racetrack.
Such a cool car. It's like a go-kart with a bit more power, but it's incredible. How nimble it is. You brake, turn in, the car slides a bit. You have to counter to steer a little. Just totally pure.
Porsche's circuit in Leipzig is a best of from racing circuits around the world. The 2.2-kilometer track features one legendary curve after the other. The corkscrew from Monterey is replicated here, as is the famous carousel from the Nürburgring. The cars reach their highest speed on the straight before the Louv's curve from Monaco.
Duck down out of the wind a little to reduce drag. Wow, 150. It's wobbling around quite a bit now. It squeaks a bit, slides around a bit. The gear stick travel is really long. When changing up from second to third, I have to lean forward. Crazy.
The 550 can reach a top speed of 220 kilometers per hour. It was ahead of its time from a technical standpoint. Independent suspension, dry sump lubrication system, and a limited slip differential to minimize wheel slip. On their own, nothing groundbreaking in the mid-1950s. But the engineers put all the technology available at the time into the Spyder.
It's hard to believe that the car is already 60 years old. So you hit the brakes, the back end slides out a bit. It's a little skittish.
The first of the 550 models, like this one here, only have 4 gears with a correspondingly wide ratio transmission.
So here. Second gear. Turn in, the car slides a little and drift out. That's so awesome. At 4,000 RPM, it takes a while. You need to keep the engine speed up at all times. 5 to 6,000 RPM and it really starts moving. And then it screams out from back there.
Only a few people could afford the 25,000 Deutschmark purchase prices back then. businessmen, wealthy private racers, or actors. But for their money, they got a reliable and manageable race car. And although the Spyder only came with a 1.5-liter engine, it regularly left the competition in its wake during races.
The driver is an integral part of the action. You can sense everything that the car is doing. So you drive at the limit without it being dangerous, as the car tells you what it's doing. Those guys were heroes. Driving it in races like the Targa Florio, unbelievable.
The Targa Florio, an endurance race through the Sicilian mountains, one of the most important rallies in the world in the 1950s. In 1956, a 550 secured Porsche's first ever overall victory here. The car also enjoyed success at the 24 Hours of Le Mans, winning the 1.5-liter class. And it was faster than some of its larger engine competitors too. It accomplished the same feat at the Carrera Panamericana, an endurance race through Mexico, and came first in its class at the Nürburgring, a single-stage 1,000-kilometer race.
And then there's what has always distinguished Porsche to this day, reliability. When you sit in a Porsche racing car today, you can focus on the driving. You don't have to worry about a wing flying off or losing a wheel. This reliability inspires confidence in the car.
The 550 was proof that Porsche could do it, and that you don't always need lots of power to win races. But for proof of the contrary, meaning a lot of power helps a lot, is provided by the next motorsport legend, the 917. Developed specifically to win the World Sports Car Championship, the car had 1,000 horsepower at its disposal. The V12 engine is exactly 4,999 cubic centimeters in size, the maximum allowed by the Racing Federation. The 917 was Porsche's first racing car with turbochargers. It was fitted with 2 of them, a somewhat shocking experience for the race car drivers.
The most striking thing for me was the power released when the turbo kicked in. To explain, a turbocharger is driven by the exhaust gases. You press the gas pedal and counted 21, 22, and then you got slammed in the back. It was unbelievable. To be honest, it was a hussy to drive, but in a good way.
Today, however, the roughly 50-year-old hussy is showing her temperamental side. No trace of the slam in the back. The engine refuses to start. More than a sputter cannot be coaxed from the car. Indiscernible to the layman, the sputtering of the engine provides the experts with a first tentative diagnosis.
It's pretty sensitive when it comes to the spark plugs. If there's any soot on them, it won't run.
The mechanics remove the spark plugs to check their condition.
The spark plug is damp. This indicates that it's getting fuel, but probably no spark. We'll have to try it out. We'll reconnect the spark plugs to the ignition cables and see if it makes a spark. Gas, sparks, it should usually run then. These are the 2 ingredients we need.
Driver Lars actually only needs 1 ingredient, a race car that's drivable. The mechanics first test whether the removed spark plugs generate a spark at all.
Ready?
Yep.
Pressing.
Okay.
It's sparking.
It's sparking.
The spark plugs are working, but the engine of the 917 still refuses to start. In short, it's going to take a while. The 1,000 horsepower Porsche is pushed into the stall for a more thorough examination. One door further along, a legend from the following decade is waiting. The 911 4x4 from 1984. The off-road derivative of the famous sports coupe is also known internally as the 953. The mechanics can tell just by the sound if the engine is running smoothly. During warm-up, they check the various pipes for leaks as well. They tug hard on the throttle, unleashing a brutal roar from the boxer engine. At last, Lars can get back behind the wheel. He began his life as a race car driver in rally sport. The off-road Porsche was already long retired by then.
Check out the chunky tires and the spring travel. This car really belongs off-road. We'll have to see if we can find some grass or some gravel we can drive it on. I think it'll be more at home there.
The 911 4x4 is 3 years older than Lars. Let's see if they hit it off.
It's certainly loud.
The car was specifically developed for the Paris-Dakar Rally.
Awesome.
It's based on a standard Porsche 911 Carrera. But here, the suspension is raised instead of lowered.
You'd never have realized there was a curb there. Unbelievable.
And has a reinforced chassis and all-wheel drive.
You can drive anywhere with a car like this. Man, it's loud. I can't hear myself speaking here.
It took 9 months to develop this 1.2-ton declaration of war. 3 of them took part in the 1984 Paris-Dakar Rally.
Driving this thing in the desert must have been so amazing.
The qualified rally driver realizes you don't have to treat the off-road 911 with kid gloves. With 225 horsepower, it manages just fine next to the track too.
You really can drive over anything.
Well, as long as the car's running.
Oh.
Suddenly, the all-wheel drive 911 loses power. For driver Lars, this is the second unplanned lunch break today. He's stranded halfway around the circuit.
So, that's that then? Something's not quite right.
The 1984 Paris-Dakar champion needs a tow truck. In the middle of the desert, the driver and co-driver would have to troubleshoot the problem and repair the damage themselves. It's too early to say exactly what has gone wrong today. Back in the pits, they immediately start diagnosing the problem. Driver Lars is still preoccupied with what went wrong.
I hope the guys can sort it out. You don't have to worry about anything. You can drive over and through everything. It's pretty awesome.
Troubleshooting. All they know at first is that the engine just died while driving. The team of mechanics quickly focus their attention on the nearly 40-year-old electronics.
It's dead and it's staying dead.
Soon coming to life next door, however, is the 917 Spyder. After a brief hesitation, the 12 cylinders rumbled to life as if nothing had happened.
All 24 spark plugs have been replaced. It has dual ignition, so 2 spark plugs per cylinder. That's why it took a bit longer.
It's brought outside to warm up. So that's what the 1,000 horsepower Porsche 917 sounds like. The crew is relieved that at least this car is up and running again. Lars Kern prepares himself to drive one of the most successful racing cars of the 1970s. It was with a 917 that Porsche clinched overall victory in Le Mans for the first time. One interesting feature is that the wheelbase can be adjusted in the pits in order to optimize grip. This is made possible by its specially designed space frame.
1,000 horsepower, it's insane.
In this model, the distance between front and rear axle is exactly 2.5 meters.
You sit so far forward, practically above the front axle, and behind you there's just engine. You're basically taking an engine for a spin.
The engine can propel the car to an estimated top speed of 360 kilometers per hour.
You can tell it's much more of a racing car. You can really hammer it through the corners. Gas, 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 and then it's whoa! Fortunately, there's no speedometer in here, no ABS, nothing but 1,000 horsepower.
As is the case with this circuit, most tracks are too short to reach the 917's top speed.
When you've got 1,100 Newton meter, 4 gears are also enough. Fast corners are no problem. Amazing, it has real aerodynamics. Doesn't like tight corners like this, though. In tight corners, the solid connection between the rear axles mean the car doesn't want to steer properly. And now, back on the gas.
From 0 to 100 in under 2.5 seconds.
Stones are flying into the cockpit, freaking awesome.
Open cockpit racing cars. In this speed category, something almost only ever seen in Formula One racing today. The entire architecture of the car is designed for speed.
I think my legs are in front of the front wheels. Can't imagine what would happen if you had an accident in this thing. Guys were totally crazy back then.
Back then, some considered the whole idea of building the 917 totally crazy too. For Porsche, the project was a huge risk. The Zuffenhauseners had already demonstrated that they could win with small, lightweight, well-engineered cars. But only individual races, though. The purpose of the 917 was to finally win a title in the World Sports Car Championship. But to do this meant developing a much bigger engine. Porsche concentrated nearly all their efforts on the project, a big financial risk. One of the proponents, the then head of the development, Ferdinand Piëch, who would later become one of the big names in the automotive industry.
If you follow the career of Professor Piëch, he always came up trumps, and he was proven right. And that was the amazing thing. Whatever he started, he followed through on, and knock on wood, it worked out.
And how? After some initial setbacks, the 917 delivered. The car gives Porsche its first overall victory at the 24 Hours of Le Mans. And it wins the prestigious Can-Am Series in the USA. Between 1969 and 1975, it secures numerous championship titles in Europe and in America. The horsepower monster retires a legend. And Porsche has made a huge advance. The 800-kilogram race car guzzles between 70 and 100 liters of fuel per 100 kilometers, depending on driving style. 60 years ago, the gas prices were on a different level, though. Lars has returned the priceless collector's items safely to the stall.
It's actually fairly easy to drive. Despite the brutal power delivery, sure, you have to pay attention when exiting a corner, but otherwise the car is pretty easy to balance. It always slides a bit, and if you keep it in that state, it's actually pretty cool.
Another car must still be returned to a drivable state, however. The all-wheel drive 911. That's also known internally simply as the Paris-Dakar. At least, it looks like the error has been found. This 35-year-old control unit is defective. But where can you get hold of a part like that now?
You have to go up to Malta. There's a cupboard of ECUs there. I'll send you a photo of it in a second. And I'd like one, please. And I won't take no for an answer. From the Paris-Dakar, okay?
Okay.
It helps when you have connections and have worked at the Porsche Museum for years. Photos are taken and sent so that the colleague at the other end of the line can organize the right replacement part. All they can do now is hope.
My colleague has narrowed down the cores to the point that the only thing left is the ECU. We're now trying to get hold of a control unit from Porsche in Stuttgart. The colleague is now being sent the part number and pictures and will try to locate one. It's a historic car, so the ECUs are not exactly available off the shelf from your local dealer.
I'll get back to you. Thanks. Bye.
Ciao.
It's looking good. We have 188 and 284 controllers with the same Porsche number. It could work out.
Könnte funktionieren.
Until the replacement part arrives, there's nothing else they can do on the Paris-Dakar anyway. The emergency call ends up in this building, the Porsche Museum in Stuttgart-Zuffenhausen. This is the actual home of the motorsport icons. The 5,600 square meter exhibition space is where legendary racing cars, limited edition vehicles, and prototypes spend their retirement. The valuable exhibits are by no means empty shells without engines. The vast majority are well maintained and drivable.
No one back in the 50s and 60s would have thought that someone would still be running these cars 50 years later. So why are we doing this? Because the cars make it possible. They're built so stably and durably that the technology allows us to. And yes, the cars are actually driven from one event to another.
They're maintained by a 10-man team of mechanics in the in-house workshop. Including the 80 showroom exhibits, the museum's inventory encompasses a total of 600 vehicles. And they're restored, maintained, and kept in good condition by the mechanics. They can get a hybrid engine from 2020 up and running, as well as any system from the end of the 19th century.
We, of course, want to show our fans out there that regardless of how old a car is, it still starts at the press of a button that makes the typical Porsche sound.
Okay, turn the key and let's get it started. I'll give some throttle.
Keeping the vehicles in their original condition is a priority for the museum. It's often the little details that really bring a car's history back to life, like the hood of our Dakar Rally winner.
This decal here is the original. It was still in good condition. It's still attached. So we keep the original materials wherever possible and only do what's absolutely necessary.
The decal has been stuck to the hood since 1984. But there's another level above original condition. This Porsche 919 Hybrid is still covered in the dirt from its last race in 2017, when its unbelievable success story ended. For 3 years in a row, the 24 Hours of Le Mans was won by a 919.
These are the Le Mans stickers. It's like Christmas. These are decals for a 919. The Le Mans stickers got damaged, and the company that decorates our cars has now sent us new ones for the 2016 car. Great. They're always different. At one time, it only said 24 Hours Le Mans. For 2016, they added the date.
Many of the vehicles here in the Porsche Museum are irreplaceable one-offs or from limited production runs. There are just a handful of examples of this famous 911 GT1 in the world.
There was a customer team that ran two cars, the two works vehicles, a test car and a chassis for the road homologation vehicle. There are a total of 6 chassis, and they're all back with us. 3 of them are drivable, and the other 3 are used as show cars. Obviously, this is the most desirable and requested, as it's the original Le Mans winner from '98. All the parts are still in the factory, including parts for the bodywork, chassis and engine. And whatever is no longer available has to be fabricated.
Depending on the model, the museum crew needs up to 2 days to prepare one of their historic vehicles for an appearance at an exhibition, car show, or racing event. In the stall next to the broken-down 911 rally car waits one of the most reliable racing cars of all time. And in the opinion of many experts, the most successful too. The 962, Hans-Joachim Stuck's favorite car.
These things here are what my life revolves around right after my 2 children. Obviously, I've experienced triumph and tragedy with the car. Considering that I've put my heart and soul into this car, its development, driving it, etc., it's been a big part of my life and has a place in it. And in my heart.
The 962 raced into the hearts of an entire generation of motorsport fans in the mid-1980s. At the time, the car was an aerodynamic wonder. Thanks to its pronounced ground effect, the supercar could theoretically drive upside down on the ceiling at a speed of 190 kilometers per hour. Its reliability meant that in its day, the 4.77-meter-long car was very popular with private racing teams. More than 130 were built in the 1990s, a record number. At the back sits a twin-turbocharged 3-liter 6-cylinder boxer engine, air-cooled. It produces a whopping 700 horsepower with an overall weight of just 860 kilograms. Time to warm up the engine. One of the mechanic's most important tools, the men say, are their ears. Having listened carefully, everything sounds good. Even for Armin Burger and his crew, getting the 962 ready for the track again is not an everyday occurrence.
It's always something special. When we take the race cars out, it's always something special. We're at the racetrack. And certainly today, because we not only have the car here, but the driver too. So that's a real highlight.
Because Hans-Joachim Stuck is driving his 962 himself, it was with this car that he achieved his greatest triumph. As he puts it, the overall victory in Le Mans. He's always there on site at the technical check.
The tyre isn't brand new, it's been worn in. There are these pits. If you look here, there are pits in the tread, these 4 points. And underneath, you can see the carcass. That lets me see how much tread is left. There isn't much there to start with, maybe 4 millimeters. But we can wear it down to about 1 millimeter, or even right down to the carcass. We can easily drive another 20 laps on them.
20 laps in what is probably Hans-Joachim Stuck's favorite place in the world. He's brought his original helmet with him, white stars on a blue background. And his 30-year-old racing overalls are there too, and still fit perfectly. Something no other ex-racing driver is likely to make look so easy. The 1.94-meter tall man is well versed in entering the cramped cockpit. He's sat in here hundreds of times. close the door and Stucky is back in his element. A journey back to a glorious past.
Driving the Porsche 962, winning car of Le Mans 1987.
Mr. Stuck steps on the gas and winds the clock back 30 years.
You get in and you know exactly where all the switches are, and it's just like it was yesterday.
He's so at one with the car that he can take his hands off the wheel for a moment.
Absolutely amazing.
One of the highlights, the dual clutch transmission allows you to shift up without stepping off the gas.
The acceleration is incredible, it's insane.
The car can reach a top speed of 360 kilometers per hour, but its biggest strength is its cornering ability.
Another great thing about it is its driving precision. See how steady the steering wheel is. Turn in once and follow the racing line. You can only do that with a car that has a first-rate chassis that you can totally rely on.
The 962 hails from a time without power-assisted brakes. To brake hard, you have to press the pedal to the floor.
70 kilos of pedal pressure. That was real men's work. You really had to be physically fit. If you weren't, you couldn't drive fast.
Today, Stucky can still drive fast. He's proven that, although perhaps not quite as fast as back in the day.
You have to ask yourself, how did we do it back then? How fit were these guys? What did we demand of ourselves? Physically, mentally, during the race, with competition, rain, with all manner of problems, with accidents, you know? And we always drove at the limit, absolutely insane.
Hans-Joachim Stuck, in particular, drove the 962 like no other. Of all the drivers, he drove the most kilometers in the car and won. In 1986 and 1987, he and his teammates came in first overall in the 24 Hours of Le Mans. The dream of a lifetime for the then 35-year-old.
I'll never forget the moment in Le Mans after the first victory in '86. Thanks again to my favorite car, standing on the podium, and I said to myself, Stuck, you've finally done it. You've won Le Mans. That was a moment I'll never forget. I get goosebumps thinking about it, see? Wonderful.
In the opinion of many experts, the 962 became, over the course of its life, the most successful racing car of all time. After its premiere in 1984, it won a total of 54 races, the last of which 10 years later in 1994. The combination of reliability and speed made it an extremely popular choice with private racing teams too. Porsche produced 130 cars, an impressive number for a racing car. So many 962s were raced by private teams that Porsche Works team withdrew from competition. The car enjoys a legendary reputation to this day.
It's such a wonderful feeling to be back in the car that you won in, you know? Triumph and tragedies.
End of the stint. A happy racing driver and two almost as happy mechanics.
Beautiful. It's wonderful, right? Awesome.
Perfect.
You know what the best thing is? No power steering, no power brakes. It's how a racing car should be.
Mechanical.
Exactly. So cool.
Brings back memories, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
The Porsche 962 has once again demonstrated what it's capable of. After all, reliability is its hallmark. It can cause even a former German touring car champion to become perhaps a little cocky.
Climb in, race 24 hours in Le Mans, and win.
This is the package everyone has been waiting for. The contents? High-tech from the 1980s. These are the spare ECUs for the standard rally Porsche. Appearance and size are right, at least. Theoretically, they should get the car up and running again.
I've checked the number here, and the control units are identical.
Steuergerät.
This one is from 87 and that one from 88. We'll test it now.
Und jetzt testen wir's.
That means install the new controller and connect it to the old cable. Reconnect the battery. Turn the ignition key and pray.
So, the moment of truth?
Is the solution really that simple?
Läuft.
It's running.
The efforts of the colleagues in Zuffenhausen were worth it. The men will try and save the old ECU.
They're high quality and, more importantly, valuable parts, and there aren't that many around. It's often the way someone got in a car and drove up here to Leipzig yesterday evening to bring it to us. Ewald's just installed it, done.
Ewald hat's jetzt eingebaut, läuft.
When it comes to loudness, none of the other cars here this weekend are a match for the rally monster. The fact that this car exists at all is not something that's obvious. The idea of making a 911 off-road capable came from rally racing legend Jackie Ickx. The Porsche engineers developed the 911-based off-roader in less than a year. A steel roll cage is welded to the chassis. The number of front shock absorbers doubled, and the six-cylinder boxer from the then Carrera adopted. The 225 horsepower are split 31% to the front axle and 69% to the rear axle. The 911 4x4 is clearly not a circuit racer.
Wahnsinn, das Auto.
Amazing. The car has zero grip here. It's really exciting to drive it on asphalt. And it's so loud. It feels a bit like an ocean liner when braking. What the heck? We'll drive straight on here. I really don't think this is where it belongs.
Lars throws away the anchor and leaves the track.
We'll head off-road for a bit. Bye.
As luck would have it, there's an off-road track next to the circuit. A 132-hectare playground for nature lover Lars and his new friend.
Awesome. Great fun.
Here, the rally car can demonstrate what it's really capable of.
There was a huge pothole there and you don't even notice it.
The rally Porsche gouges its way noisily along the 3-kilometer-long track.
Seriously, this car has no business driving on asphalt. It needs to be pounded here in the off-road park.
One wonders what the pit crew will make of his little excursion.
It's filling up with dust in here.
Hopefully the new ECU won't suffer too badly.
But it's not ideal when you don't know which way to go. If it were a real rally, we'd have a co-driver who'd tell you exactly which way to go. Unfortunately, we don't have one, but it's an absolute blast.
Flashback. On its first appearance, the 911 4x4 made a big impact. Overall victory, and not at any old rally, but at the Paris-Dakar in 1984. At the wheel of the winning car sat Frenchman René Mege. The spiritual father of the car, Jackie Ickx, placed 6th after suffering technical problems. The third car, which was actually intended as a service vehicle, was driven by a mechanic to a respectable 26th place, and did so after the car overturned twice en route. The rally was a victory parade for Porsche. It was the first time that a sports car had won the race. After the Paris-Dakar, the car was immediately retired. A brief but decidedly dominant appearance. That makes the 911 4x4 a legend. In Leipzig, Lars Kern continues to drive flat out.
It does wonders for your back. And it actually brakes really well, without ABS. Just slam on the brakes and power through the corner.
Then quickly wash off the evidence of the wild ride in the ditch.
Not too fast because of the bow wave, I was told.
Let's hope the control unit stays dry.
I think it's best we don't open the doors right now.
Good idea. Even after over 30 years, the car is still watertight.
It's so awesome. I finally found the ideal terrain for the car. But I think I should quit now while I'm ahead.
Lars and the rally winner head back to the pit road. This naked rolling chassis belongs to a true motorsport icon from the 1990s. The 911 GT1 from 1988 may not be the youngest, but is nonetheless equipped with loads of complicated racing electronics. The brief test drive revealed that everything is working perfectly. The mechanics now reattach the bodywork and doors to the car. The interior of the GT1 is made from reinforced carbon fiber. The load-bearing monocoque chassis increases safety for the driver. The outer skin is made of plastic. It weighs just a few kilograms. It too helped the developers keep the overall weight to under a ton. The car weighs a total of 970 kilograms. It only takes the men a few minutes to assemble. Important when competing. If anything breaks, it must be easily replaceable during a quick pit stop. The car is officially listed as a variant of the 911, but it has little in common with the road version. Engine, suspension, brakes, chassis, all custom made, as it should be for a genuine race car. Like so many Porsches before it, the car is a synthesis of what was then state-of-the-art technology. The twin-turbocharged six-cylinder engine outputs around 550 horsepower, with an engine displacement of just 3.2 liters. The sophisticated engine management system gave it an edge that could decide the outcome of a race. The GT1 required less fuel than most of its competitors, and this also played a role in its greatest success.
I have a special connection to it. It's the dream car of my childhood. I was 10 years old when it won Le Mans. And it was the first time I consciously watched car racing and Le Mans.
For test driver Lars Kern, this will be a very special outing. He's never sat in the 911 GT1 before. He drives the first few meters carefully.
My childhood dream, with cold tires.
But then, he simply accelerates.
Such a wicked car.
He seems to be enjoying the water-cooled 3.2-liter mid-mounted engine.
So hot.
And builds up the acceleration.
You hardly dare press the gas pedal as the acceleration is brutal. Whoa! The sequential transmission works brilliantly. You need a bit of force to shift up. A bit sideways. I can barely change gears quick enough, it's that fast. Jesus. Yeah, it's a proper race car.
The proper race car meets the expectations Lars has had since his childhood. From 0 to 100 kilometers per hour in 3 seconds and at a top speed of 315 kilometers per hour.
The acceleration is amazing. And the drivability, the car immediately accelerates even from low revs.
Acceleration like a Formula One car, but much easier to control. That too, the result of years of development work.
The car has so much grip when turning into a corner. Then in the apex it gets a bit weak. Whoa! And then it just goes straight ahead.
Straight ahead is exactly what the GT1 can do best. In tight curves, though, the Le Mans winner can get a bit skittish.
Aber auch hier, man merkt,
Here as well, you realize that these Le Mans cars don't like slow corners at all.
diese ganzen Le Mans Autos einfach nicht.
The GT1 has a very special success story. 1998. For the entire year, it was always one of the leading cars in the GT Championship, but never came in first. But then in Le Mans, the GT1 finally became a legend. Here, its reliability paid dividends. The competition from Toyota had a seemingly unassailable lead, but retired an hour before the end of the race. Suddenly, finally, the GT1 was in first place. And second too, a double win in Le Mans. Porsche had done it again. Incidentally, the winning car from Le Mans can be identified by its red exterior rear-view mirrors. Lars Kern is driving the original car.
It's a bit unusual to sit on the right-hand side, of course, but they did that because most of the circuits run clockwise, and it's easier for the driver to sit on the inside of a bend.
After a few laps, driver and car have become one.
Awesome. My feet are already burning. The pedals get so hot, unbelievable. I reckon if we did another 10 laps, my shoes would melt.
But before it comes to that, the GT1 heads into the final lap. Through the bus stop chicane from Spa with a car that sticks to the ground. Then the drive is over. In this stall, the ultimate driving machine is waiting for its outing. A car that eclipses everything we've seen thus far. The Porsche 919 Tribute. Compared to the other models, it's still a youngster. But despite its youth, it's already a legend. A car that requires much more elaborate preparation before it can move even a meter. The 919 likes its motor oil gently preheated.
We're warming it up. This is hot. And the oil is added just before the engine is started. The engineer specifies exactly how many litres are needed, usually around 3. We add it and start her up.
The entire crew is busy working on the 919. A huge amount of effort just to start the engine at all. An engineer monitors everything on the laptop. The hybrid is extremely sensitive, and the smallest of mistakes could result in damage.
If we were to start now when cold, it would quickly seize up. That's why we preheat it. She's a bit of a diva, so she needs special treatment. So we preheat her and preheat the oil we put in too. Start with 3.5 and we'll add the last half liter afterwards. We'll see how well that works.
The quantity and temperature of the oil are precisely calculated beforehand. In a real race, a 919 is attended to by a crew of up to 40. Today, old hand Armin Burger starts the car himself. No one can say whether this engine is running smoothly just based on the sound. Only the computer can monitor all the parameters of the car. The men now shift through the gears. In this way, the transmission oil is brought up to operating temperature too. The 919 is extremely complex. Even the smallest of errors could have fatal consequences later on the track. The test run was successful. It took a whole hour to complete.
The technology in the vehicles is getting more complex. There are far more possibilities to monitor pressure levels, temperatures and conditions than in the past. So the effort involved is correspondingly greater too. An appropriate procedure was developed as a result.
Only now are the tires fitted. The car needs to be driven within half an hour. Otherwise, the men would have to start from the beginning again. The 919 is a miracle of technology. All the surfaces are aerodynamically refined. Every air intake is in the perfect location. Beneath the bodywork lies a V4 engine with a displacement of just 2 liters. It produces 720 horsepower. An additional 420 horsepower is generated by an electrical energy recovery system. The technology is so secret that many of the details cannot be shown here. Lars Kern is given a car that's more sophisticated than all the others. Here, as in the case of most racing cars, the steering wheel is fitted after the driver gets in. This one has more control buttons, though. The first lap serves only to warm up the tires, but even now, the car's enormous power is obvious.
It's so loud, I don't think you could understand a word in here.
Then, Lars Kern really steps on the gas for the first time.
The acceleration is incredible. Jesus, it certainly has grip.
The hybrid takes just over 2 seconds to go from 0 to 100 kilometers per hour.
Everything happens so fast.
In the cockpit, the driver is subjected to centrifugal forces of up to 3 Gs. The car has no ABS. The driver has to brake sensitively enough that the wheels don't lock up. If that works, the 919 behaves itself.
The car doesn't do anything unpredictable either when braking or steering. It remains stable at all times. Always stable, holy crap.
On the Nürburgring, the 919 reached a top speed of 369.4 kilometers per hour. Lars slowly but surely drives himself into a state of ecstasy.
This lateral acceleration, it's so insane.
And again, he comes up against a familiar problem. The car can't be driven flat out on this test track.
You can only use a fraction of what this car is capable of.
What the car is capable of was first hinted at in 2014. Initially, the complex hybrid technology created difficulties for the engineers. It achieved just 1 victory during its first season, in the final race of the World Endurance Championship, WEC. Things went better the following year. The 919 wins the 24 Hours of Le Mans, the Drivers' Championship, and the Constructors' World Championship. In their class, the cars are the fastest there is. In their 3rd season in 2016, things continued in the same fashion. Victory in Le Mans for the 2nd time around, once again winning the Drivers' and Constructor World Championship titles. Then, in 2017, the climax. A 3rd victory in Le Mans, and the 3rd Constructors' World Championship win in a row. The 919s have won everything there was to win. What else is there? A very special year. In 2018, the 919 is modified. Restrictions imposed by the regulations don't apply anymore. The mission? Record-breaking speeds without anything. No air conditioning, no lights, no windshield wipers. All unnecessary sensors are stripped out. The 919 is made 39 kilos lighter and given a completely new aerodynamics package. The result? Record lap in Spa, 1 minute 41.77 seconds. This is later broken again by Lewis Hamilton in Formula One racing. And then the big event. On the Nürburgring Nordschleife, Timo Bernhard smashes the legendary record lap set by Stefan Beloff in 1983. With a lap time of 5 minutes 19.54 seconds, the 919 is almost 52 seconds faster. This is its last big event. Back in Leipzig, Lars Kern is on the final stretch.
Absolutely incredible.
Unfassbar.
It's the most awesome thing there is.
Driving the over 1,000 horsepower hybrid has left him a bit speechless.
I'm so sorry. I haven't said that much. But driving this thing is an out-of-this-world experience.
Von dieser Welt.
For the 919 and the pit crew, it's time to call it a day. The priceless racing cars have all returned to the pit road in one piece. And most importantly, drivers Lars Kern and Hans-Joachim Stuck have survived unscathed as well. They and the mechanics from the museum have done an impressive job. Now it's time to pack everything up and head back to Stuttgart. On the racetrack in Leipzig, 6 motorsport icons have demonstrated that even years after their phenomenal successes, the fire in their engine compartments is far from being extinguished. 7 decades of automotive history that stand for audacity, passion, and the ultimate in engineering ingenuity made in Germany. If one thing is certain, it's that Porsche drivers will stand on podiums holding up glittering trophies in the future too. Never before have these 6 racing legends shared a track together. They will now return to the museum in Zuffenhausen. But it won't be long before their engines will roar to life once more and the racing cars from Stuttgart will tear up the asphalt somewhere in the world.